What's up, guys? It's James from Lucrative MMA. I'm back to drop some more knowledge on you. And today we're going to be talking about the preliminary card of the upcoming UFC Vegas 22 card, which is Kevin Holland versus Derek Brunson. Now, I just wanted to hop on here and tell you some of my thoughts, tell you who you should maybe bet on, tell you who should maybe not bet on, go over the betting lines. And as always, this is going to be from a betting perspective. So I am a sports bettor. My goal with MMA is to make money. Of course, I love the sport, but I love making money on the sport more. And so when I break this down, this is not just going to be breaking down the styles and the potential winners of the fights, but it's going to be breaking it down from a betting perspective, right? So I'm going to look at the lines and I'll go over the lines with you, the lines where they sit right now, and, you know, make some sort of decision on where the value may be, if I see value in the lines, if it's a pass fight, dog or pass, any of that good stuff. So we're going to get straight into the card. Pretty decent card. You know, I say that about most UFC cards, to be honest. So most UFC cards, to me, are pretty decent cards. And even when you get a poor card, there's always a banger or two of a fight on them. And we've definitely got a couple bangers, and we're going to get into a couple bangers when I break this down. We're actually starting off with a banger. So I'll just pull up the card so you can see it. We've got Derek Brunson versus Kevin Holland there, but we won't be talking about them today. We're going to be talking about the first fight on the card. Now, unfortunately, the first fight got cancelled. It was meant to be Johnny Eduardo versus Anthony Burchek, and talk about bangers of fights. That was going to be an absolute banger for sure. But that got cancelled. I believe Johnny Eduardo had to pull out. I'm not exactly sure the reason why he had to pull out, but he did. And so now we're going to get Bruno Silva versus JP Buys. That's going to be the first fight on the card. As you can see here, 125-pound men. So they're in the flyweight division, which is my favorite division of the UFC, which is kind of ironic, seeing as, you know, a couple years ago it was looking like it was going to get scrapped. I'm very happy it didn't. And we've got an absolute banger of a flyweight matchup here. We got JP Buys coming in at 9-2. And then you'll see Bruno Silva here is 10-5-2 with one no contest. Bit of a weird record there. But the height is, you know, basically a wash, and the reach is basically a wash. I mean, JP Buyer's got 1 inch of height on him and 2 inches of reach. So a little bit of size advantage for JP Buyers there, but it's basically a wash. So I'll just bring up the odds for this fight. This is from Best Fight Odds. And as you can see here where my cursor is, we've got Bruno Silva currently sitting around the plus 130 mark. He's even plus 110 here on one book. And then we've got JP Buys coming in around the minus 145, minus 160 range. And again, on that same book, he's actually a shorter favorite, which is minus 135. So I will say, and I will show you right now, if you look at the screen, when this fight was originally announced, the line was set by the bookmakers at where the line is right now. So Bruno Silva opened up about a plus 140 underdog, and you will see that now. So Bruno Silva, he opened up when this fight got announced at plus 145. Then money came in on JP Buyers for the first couple of days, and he went up all the way to plus 220, which is a bit of a crazy line in my opinion. And then after that, it's been bet down slowly and slowly. And then within the past week or so, you'll see that the line has dramatically dropped. It stayed steady at about plus 190 for quite some time. And yeah, as I say, about a week ago, the line drastically started to get hit. And now he's down to almost 130. And as I say, one bookmaker's got him at plus 110. So the line has been steamed. And look, I will say I do see why. I'll just start off by saying I capped this fight at about a 50-50 fight. So when a line opened plus 145 for Bruno, I don't think it was like completely crazy. Although I do think it's a little bit wide. As I say, I think it should be a pick'em this fight. But where it's going now, it's actually going to a pick'em. And I wouldn't be surprised for the line to flip come fight time. But then if the line does keep getting steamed for Bruno and it does get to a pick'em or Bruno becomes the favorite, I'm pretty sure you'll see some buyers' money come in because, as I say, this is a close fight. You know, Bruno Silva, in my opinion, you know, doesn't really deserve to be the underdog, but he also doesn't really deserve to be the favorite. You know, I can see the skills on JP Buys, and I know why people, you know, were betting him even when Bruno was opened at plus 140. The money came in on JP Buys, and I can see why. So just talking about this stylistically, JP Buys is a grappler. He comes in and he tries to get the fight to the ground, basically, and he's a finisher. He's got about, I think all of his wins have come by finish. We'll just bring his record up here. I taped this fight a couple of days ago, so it's not super fresh in my mind. And just for my job, what I do, I have to tape like 20, 30, 40 fights, every other week. So like I try to keep ahead of the game, but a lot of the times the records and if they've got wins by finish and stoppage, they're not fresh in my mind. I have actually made a decision about who I'm going to be betting on this fight. But first of all, we'll just bring up JP Buy's record. Yeah, so as you can see here, he's got 9 wins, and every single one of them has been by stoppage. And then he's got 2 losses, and both of them have come by stoppage as well. And I will say that this fight here against Gamzat Magomedov, you can see it's listed as a win, a round 3 win. But if you actually go back to that fight, and if you actually watch the fight like I did, you will see that Magomedov, it was a close fight throughout. But Magomedov started to run away with it a little bit in the 3rd round. JP Buys seemed like he gassed, and Magomedov really started to pour it on. He had JP up against the cage and was hitting him with some vicious ground and pound. Not ground and pound, it was more against the cage, but he did look like he could get the stoppage. And now what happened was he hit JP Buys in the back of the head. So the referee stopped the fight, and it was a DQ win to Magomedov. So although it looks like he stopped Magomedov on his Tapology record, if you actually go into it and do your research, you actually see that Magomedov basically won that fight. And if that fight, if it went on for a bit longer, or if the referee didn't stop it, or if he didn't hit him in the back of the head, then I would say that Magomedov probably wouldn't have won that fight by TKO. So it would have been another loss by JP Buys, and it would have been another loss by finish. So this guy's a kill or be killed fighter. And, his opponent, Bruno Silva, is not the same, but at the same time, he hasn't been fighting the same level of competition as his opponent, Bruno Silva. So, if Bruno Silva was fighting a lot of these guys, I believe Bruno Silva probably would have stopped a lot of these guys as well. So, JP Buys is a very, very solid wrestler. He come through and, he showed it in his Contender Series fight against Jacob Silva, right? He really put on a show in that fight. And I believe that was the Contender Series event where he was actually on the same card as his wife, who is on this card as well, Cheyenne Bays. She opens up the main card, I believe. So, the other day I put a comment or a tweet out on my Twitter saying that one of the most overused narratives in MMA is this narrative, which is, people say it all the time, the UFC wants this fighter to win, right? And I really believe that's true. I really believe that that's such an overused narrative in MMA. But I will say that it's not, because I'm saying it's overused, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? It does exist. And by putting JP Buys, whatever you want to say, and Cheyenne Buys on the same card, it looks like Cheyenne Bays has been set up to win just by her opponent. I'll say that now. And then JP Buys, it doesn't look like he's been set up to win, but, I'm sure that they want both husband and wife to win. So although that narrative is definitely overblown, and I don't even think it comes to play here just because of stylistics of the fight, I would say that, in an ideal world, the UFC probably do want them both to win. So take that information as you will. Again, I do not cap it in at all when it comes to this fight, because how I make my decisions on bets is I watch the 2 fighters in their previous fights, and then I make a decision on who's going to win the fight. I don't really listen to all these other narratives, but I will say that narrative probably does hold true in this case. But there's another argument to say that maybe it doesn't, because they're not giving Buys a very, easy win here against Bruno Silva. Let me talk about Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva is a bit of a dog, man. This guy's UFC record isn't spectacular, but all you have to do is look at who he's fought to see why that is the reason. So in his last fight, he fought Tagir Ulanbekov, who was a pretty hyped guy coming out of Russia, I believe. And, he fought handily against him. He was like a plus 350, plus 400 underdog. And Ulanbekov is mainly a wrestler, but he wasn't able to consistently get his wrestling going against Bruno Silva. So he did take Bruno down quite a number of times, actually. And there was a couple of times where he controlled Bruno on the ground. But Bruno didn't settle on bottom position. He kept getting up. And, you know, he managed to put up a very good show in that fight, right? He definitely lost it for me. He lost a unanimous decision, and I agree with that. But he put up a very solid show. Now, if we go to the fight before that, that was against David Dvorak, right? And I'm pretty high on David Dvorak. But let me tell you something. In that first round, it was a pretty cagey affair until Bruno Silva kicked the living hell out of David Dvorak's head and almost had him finished, right? Now, look, I don't like saying almost finished because sometimes you're not in there, right? So you can't truly tell if someone, like sometimes people look completely out of it and actually it's not that bad. They just have maybe bad body language. Everyone has different body language when they're getting hit, right? So I don't always like to say that, but it did look like he had David Dvorak very close to being finished, or at least he was badly hurt, right? And, you know, anyone can get caught with a front kick in the middle, but to do that to get against someone like David Dvorak, I definitely rate that. And then Dvorak, you know, won the next 2 rounds. I'm not going to say he dominated the next 2 rounds, but he clearly edged the next 2 rounds, and then he lost the decision there. The fight before that, he fought Khalid Taha, right? But he was fighting Khalid Taha upper weight class at bantamweight here, right? And he ended up losing by arm triangle choke in round 3. But again, he wasn't completely dominated in that fight. He put up a decent, you know, showing, and obviously it got turned into a no contest there. I'm not exactly sure why. Khalid Taha popped for something. I don't think it was steroids. I think it might have been weed or something like that. Again, memory's not the best one on that, but it doesn't really matter. He basically lost that fight, right? I mean, you can class it as what you want, but he lost that fight. So he's on a 3-fight losing streak here, right? So, you know, on one side, you could say, JP Buys has a hard matchup because of the tape. But on another way, you can say, look, even though he looks pretty decent, he's fought 3 times in the UFC and he's got beat 3 times in the UFC, you know, and he's been stopped once. But look, as I said at the beginning of this breakdown, I do believe this fight is basically a pick'em. You know, the experience edge is hugely in the favor for Bruno Silva, not only because he has quite a few more fights. He has, you can tell he's got 10, 5. So he's got 17 fights, whereas JP Buys only has 11 fights, right? So, you know, it's fairly decent experience, 6 more fights. I guess if you want to look through the amateur records, that might tell a different story. But what I will say is the experience in the UFC is dramatically more for Bruno Silva, of course. And he hasn't just been fighting anybody in the UFC, right? So he's got that UFC experience, but then he's also been fighting people like Ulanbekov, David Dvorak, Khalid Taha. So, I mean, these are high-level fighters. This is a big step down, in my opinion, for Bruno Silva. Although we don't know JP Buys' ceiling, I have seen JP Buys quit before in fights when he gets tired, and he does seem to gas. So, look, it's going to be very hard to put Bruno Silva away. He's a tough motherfucker. He can be done, and Bruno definitely could latch up the sub. JP could definitely latch up the sub. I'm not putting it past him. He's a kill or be killed fighter. He's never gone to decision. So, you know, he's definitely live for the submission. But if he doesn't get that submission, you know, which isn't a given with someone like Bruno, then let me tell you something. I think Bruno is going to be the one coming hard in round 3, right? And if you get Bruno at like a good line, or if he was able to snap him up at like anything above plus 150, I believe it's a solid bet. As I say, I believe the fight should be, you know, 50-50, 55-45, either way for each man. I wouldn't disagree with, right? So in that case, I'm going to say it's 50-50. So I jumped in at on Bruno Silva at plus 170. But that has obviously been steamed now. As I say, he's plus 110 on the book. I wouldn't be playing plus 110. I wouldn't really be playing plus 130 either, because plus 130 basically implies that he's got like a 43% chance of winning the fight, right? I'm saying it's virtually a 50-50. You could go 55 for JP. You could maybe go 55 for Bruno, but I'm calling it a 50-50. So in that regard, there's not much value on the line, but, you know, I wouldn't even hate a bet against JP either. So basically what I'm trying to say is I believe that there's not really much value on the line now. It's pretty accurate, you know, but again, I'm saying it is a 50-50. So really, there may be some value still on Bruno, but, you know, I got in at plus 170. I was happy with that. I'm just going to say, me personally, if I was listening to this breakdown now, and, you know, or if I only taped this fight today, I wouldn't be betting anyone. I wouldn't see any value in this line, right? I know a couple of sharp people that I know are on the unders in this fight. That's not a bad look. You know, I was eyeing it up. I believe it was like plus 150 at one point. I'm not sure exactly what it is now. Let's have a look at what the unders are sitting at. It was sitting at plus 150. Now it's sitting at like plus 140. Best line, you can get plus 145 on 5 dimes. I do actually have access to 5 dimes, but plus 130, plus 135, depending. Yeah, again, I don't see too much value on that line. I do think that, yeah, it looks like on paper this fight will probably be stopped inside the distance, but I do give a lot of credence into Bruno Silva's durability. And so unless JP gets that early submission, I don't think you're going to see JP submit him late. So you're kind of banking on Bruno Silva to wear down JP and then get him out of there, which I definitely think's live. Look, let me tell you, I think this fight is probably not going to go to decision, right? But again, I don't see too much value on the line. So unfortunately, I can't give you guys, you know, a solid play because I just don't see too much value on the line now. I think people have hit it early, like me. You know, I sent the plus 170 bet to my members earlier in the week, and that's what you have to do in this game, guys. You have to be on the ball, you have to do tape early, and you have to get in when the lines, you know, haven't been steamed. They've been steamed at this point, so you're not gonna see too much value on the lines because all the value has been bet out of the lines because it's fight week now, you know. So that's how this game works. With that being said, I will go with Bruno Silva to get a late 3rd round finish as my final prediction. I'll just catch up with the chat very slightly here. We got MMA Prognoza. Where is people? Have you muted everyone? No, there's not many people in here. There's only 3 of us in here right now. I appreciate all of you. But, you know, we're only just starting this game, so I'm sure we'll grow. Dan P saying he got Bruno at plus 200. Can't believe how much that line has been steamed. Baez is a quitter. Yeah, look, well done for that bet, Dan. I'm sitting with a ticket on Bruno at plus 170. So, you know, I'm happy with that. So I would have been super happy with the plus 200. Baez is a quitter. Yeah, maybe. I think he definitely gasses. I'll tell you that. He definitely gasses. And, you know, when, you know, what's that saying? It's like a gasser makes a quitter out of all of us or something like that. So, look, potentially Baez might be a quitter. But what we know is that he is a gasser. Now, what I will say is that he's a young dude, right? So he could be making heaps of improvements in between fights. I think he's like 25 years old. He may even be a bit younger. So, you know, he may have improved that gas tank. He may have improved his quitterness, if you want to call it that, like the word that you use. So, you know, you can't bank on that. It's not like we've seen it so many times. But yeah, I believe we've seen it enough to think that Bruno doesn't get put away, which, you know, is tough to put him away. He definitely could be there in the later rounds. MMA Prognosis is saying bet Bruno live after round 2. Yeah, definitely a chance. Talk to you. I will talk to you, man. I just wanted to get through the fight first, and then I catch up with the chat. That's how I do it. So that's what I'll do for the next fight. We're going to get through the fight. I'll give you my breakdown, give you my opinion, and then I catch up with the fight and talk to you about what I just broken down. So the next fight we have is Julia Avila versus Julia Stoliarenko. So we got 2 Julias coming up against each other, right? But very different Julias. We got one Julia from the USA and we got one Julia from Lithuania. So other than that, they're pretty similar though. So they're both 5'7", according to UFC.com. But you know, the UFC talks a lot of shit with the height, so can never be 100% sure with that. But then, you know, they're in bantamweight. They've definitely got that right. But not really, because they're probably a lot, you know, they definitely don't weigh 135 right now. Anyway, their reach is pretty similar. You've got 2 inches of reach. Advantage goes to Julia Avila, the Raging Panda. And I like this girl, man. I like this girl. She hits very hard for a woman. She hits extremely hard for a 135-pounder. And she hits super hard for a woman 135-pounder, right? If she cracks you on the chin, you're probably going to go down. I mean, she's got heavy, heavy hands, but she doesn't have too much technique behind her striking. But she doesn't need too much technique because if she hits you once, you flinch up, you get hurt. Your defense goes out the window a little bit. So she doesn't really need too much technique. I mean, if you go back and watch Julia Avila's fights, you will tell she kind of just bum rushes girls because she knows if she hits you once, you're going to shell up. She doesn't even need the technique. She doesn't need to snipe you from distance. She's not that type of fighter. She's a forward, come forward, pressure, strong puncher type of fighter, right? And against Julia Stoliarenko, I think Stoliarenko's going to oblige her in that fight. I mean, Stoliarenko's a bit of a gangster. She used to do left way. Now, if you guys don't know what left way is, it's basically a sport where it's a combat sport where it was originated in Myanmar, which is Burma, and it's basically a sport where it's bare knuckle boxing. It's basically bare knuckle. How could I explain it? It's basically bare knuckle Muay Thai with takedowns. And the only way you can win is by knockout. So just go and Google it. Left way. It's LETHWEI. I want to say. And it's a bit of a brutal sport. So as I say, bare knuckle. Although I do think they wear some sort of like wraps around their hands, but I'm not sure. Or they might just be above the knuckle, like they do in bare knuckle boxing. And, you can do takedowns, but you can't do like double legs and stuff. You can do like trips, and I don't know exactly the rules. And, another thing, there's headbutts allowed. But just Google it. I'm going to get off on a tangent and talk about left way, right? But basically, why I brung that up is because Stoliarenko used to do that, right? So she's a bit of an animal, right? Like she doesn't care about getting dirty. She fought in a sport where there's headbutts, you can only win by a knockout, and she's actually 3-0 in that sport. Now, the level of competition in that sport, because it's not a very popular sport, is not very good. But look, at the end of the day, we know she's going to be a tough motherfucker, tough son of a bitch, right? Or tough daughter of a bitch, whatever you want to say. But against Julia Avila, that's not really a good style to have, man. You want to have an evasive style or a wrestling style against Julia, because if you get cracked by Julia, you're going to get hurt, man. And when I watched Julia Stoliarenko's fight against Pani Kianzad, she got hurt so much. But Pani doesn't really have that one-punch power. Pani doesn't have much power. She's got all decisions on her record. And although she definitely can find the chin better than Julia Avila, she's way more technical in the boxing range. She's got a lot better striking mechanics. She looks smoother, especially with the hands. But so she was able to land on Stoliarenko much more than Avila will be able to, in my opinion. But Avila's got the equalizer. So, if she gets hit even half the amount of times that Pani hit her, I'm talking about Stoliarenko now. If she gets hit half the times that Pani hit her, she's going to be in a world of trouble. But the thing about this is we've never seen Stoliarenko stopped. So if Stoliarenko doesn't get stopped, then what's going to happen? Because, Julia Avila, she's definitely got good cardio. I've seen her go 5 rounds. I believe it was against Nico Montana, that fight I watched where she went 5 rounds. So she's got good cardio. But what I mean is if Julia Avila doesn't get her out of there early, and it's really hard for me to say if she will. Like, I think, there's definitely a chance for that. But again, we've never seen Stoliarenko knocked out or stopped before. And, she's got that archetype, that prototype of someone who's tough as fuck. And I don't like betting against things that I haven't seen happen before. Not to say that they never could happen. Of course, there's a first time for everything, right? But, we're betting, right? And we have to analyze the most likely outcomes and then obviously compare that to the betting market. But just as a rule of thumb, I don't really like betting on things that haven't happened before, right? So, Stoliarenko has never been stopped, and I don't really want to bet on her to get stopped here. It all depends on the market, and it all depends on what line we would get on that. But, I don't want to bet on that. And what I was going to say before I talked about the betting lines is that if Avila doesn't stop her and Stoliarenko's still there, she might get a bit deterred. And then what's Stoliarenko going to do? She's going to be walking her down. She's not really, she doesn't implement like a constant wrestling game. Not in the fights I've seen anyway. And that's probably the way to beat Julia Avila, because we have seen Julia Avila beat as a huge favorite in her last fight against Sijara Eubanks. And Sijara Eubanks largely done that by the wrestling, right? I will say that Stoliarenko, even though she doesn't implement a huge wrestling game plan, she's queen of arm bars. She's got lots of arm bars, and she will throw up loads of arm bars from guard. And this is I'm not going to call it a low level. This is like medium level well, I would think Julia Avila's like medium level women's bantamweight, and Stoliarenko's probably a lower level. But because you got that medium to lower level women's MMA, the armbar from guard is always live, right? And if Julia Avila does stop drop her and jump into a guard, I can see Stoliarenko snatching up an armbar or something. I mean, if we just go on her record, she's got a ridiculous amount of armbars. And most of them ones I watched came from her back. So, if this fight does end up in the grappling range, and I do believe that Julia Avila will probably be able to keep it out of that range, but if it does end up in that range, then Stoliarenko's live, man. And we saw against Sijara Eubanks, Julia Avila didn't really have much off her back. Now, I think her defensive wrestling is decent, and defensive grappling and stuff up against the cage. She's a very strong girl. But if it does get on the ground, then, you're going to be a little bit worried. So if we go here, look, I mean, you can just see it. I mean, I don't know if you can see it. I'll zoom in for you here. So she's got an armbar there in 20 seconds. The fight before that, an armbar in 19 seconds. Fight before that, armbar in 30 seconds. If we go, before our Ultimate Fighter fight against Pani Kianzad, she's got an armbar in one round, another armbar 22 seconds, another armbar in 1 minute, another armbar down there, a flying armbar there. So, she's the armbar queen now. In this type of matchup, the armbar's live, man. The armbar's live. Anyway, if we just look at the line and we'll make a final decision on if there's any value on this fight at all. I'm telling you now, Julia Avila is a huge favorite. And I do not want to be playing Julia Avila as a huge favorite against someone like Stoliarenko, who is super dangerous with them armbars. No matter how, unlikely they are, they're drastically more likely in mid to low level women's MMA. So Julia Avila is a -350, -360 favorite, which is pretty ridiculous in my opinion. We see her drop the ball against Sarge in her last fight at this price range, and man, I have no interest in backing her at this price range. If you're going to back Julia Stoliarenko, because the risk to reward ratio is dramatically higher. You put $100 on Stoliarenko, you're getting $280 profit. You're getting like $380 back, right? You put $100 on Julia Avila, what you getting back? You're getting like what? $30 back, $25 profit, So it's ridiculous difference. And there is definitely iterations of this fight where Stoliarenko grabs up the armbar. So, maybe there's an argument for an under 2.5 rounds bet in this because, Julia Avila, as I said, I already explained how hard she hits and she could definitely knock out Stoliarenko, but I don't like betting against things that haven't happened. So I'm not saying that's out the window. It's definitely live, but it's hard for me to, get behind Avila's stoppage. And then, as I said, Stoliarenko is definitely live for the armbar, but I don't think Avila's ever been submitted. So again, you're betting on something to happen, which hasn't happened. But if there was ever a women's fight to bet on an under, just going off tape and how these girls fight, you kind of would want to back this one. But yeah, I'm not going to be playing it myself. And again, I don't think there's too much value in this line. So I'll just catch up with the chat here. I don't know if you can hear them. It sounds like fireworks outside my house. Can you hear them fireworks? If you can, tell me on the chat and I'll close my door. Andrew Jack saying, can Julia wrestle? Avila stand-up is good, but I'm worried if she gets taken down. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we saw what happened against Sarge, but Sarge is probably one of the best wrestlers in that division, I mean, she's at least top 10 wrestlers in that division, for sure, top 5. So Stoliarenko's not on a level of that wrestling, but she is dangerous. She is dangerous on the ground, right? A lot more dangerous than Sarge. But she's submission over position. So if she did get, Avila down, she would likely give up that position in order to get the submission. If she doesn't get it, Avila will be able to stand back up. Whereas against Sarge, she was just playing the control game. She was wasting minutes and she won a clear decision. So, I completely agree with you saying that you'd be worried if she gets taken down. And, if she's -370 and you're going to be worried about that, then it's not even worth a play. Don't be putting her into parlays and stuff. Not in this fight. We saw her get beat in her last fight. And, we just need to see some more against Avila with her get-up game and her defensive wrestling before we go back in her at this price range. MMA prognoser says if it goes to round 2, Avila may gas. She did look to slow down in her last fight, I will say that. But I've seen her go 5 rounds, man. So I don't think she's a gasser. I think that fight was a little bit of an anomaly. Maybe the heavy wrestling made her gas. I'm not ready to call Avila a gasser by round 2 just because of what I have seen of her in her past. She went a hard 3 rounds against Pani Kienz, Drani in the 3rd round of that fight, almost had her out late into the fight. So I'm not ready to call her a gasser. But yes, possibly when the fight does go to the ground, her wrestling cardio is not up to scratch. Dan P is saying dog or pass for me. Lego delivery here. I'll be back soon. Lego delivery. Is that like... Oh, you've got a Lego delivery. Look into the extra source of income, guys. Crazy ROI. Okay, so Dan P sells Lego. I'm assuming on Amazon. Let us know, Dan. Tell us the secrets of how to make more money, because right now we're only betting to make money, but apparently Dan sells Lego. If anyone wants any Lego, hit Dan up. PK Wood is saying Bruno Silva about to flex all over JP buys. He's got a parlays of Bruno, Yanez, and Gillespie. Damn. Good luck, bro. I think that Bruno one's going to be the one you're a little bit iffy about, to be honest. And maybe that Yanez one. I haven't taped that Yanez one yet. I like Gillespie. Gillespie should do his thing, but yeah, I'm not sure about Yanez. I haven't taped it. Pre-tape, I like the dude, though. I do like Yanez. But let's get straight on to the next fight. Montel Jackson versus Jesse Strader. Now, look, this fight was put together pretty late notice. I don't know if Jesse Strader's coming in on late notice or the whole fight was put together on late notice. I'm not 100% sure. But I'm not going to spend too long on this fight, guys. Montel Jackson's about to whoop this dude's ass. But one thing we have to note, can you guys see the stats? Let me zoom in. One thing you guys we have to note is that, as you can see, Jesse Strader here on the right, he's actually an unlocked character. So, he might bring some new stuff to the game that we haven't seen before, because obviously he's a locked character at the moment, I should say. As you can see here, he has no height, he has no weight, he has no reach and no leg reach. So we really don't know what we're coming up against. So if you're betting Montel Jackson, you're taking a bit of a wild shot. But yeah, obviously I'm just bullshitting. Look, Montel Jackson is going to fuck up Jesse Strader. I watched a couple of Jesse Strader's fights. It doesn't really impress me. He's a killer be killed fighter. And I think he's going to get killed here, by the much bigger, much stronger, much more experienced Montel Jackson. Montel Jackson is a solid prospect, We know the type of fighters that beat Montel Jackson. There's someone who can grind him out, keep taking him down, keep putting pressure on him. Jesse Strader's not that guy, man. He may have I believe he has some collegiate wrestling background, but look, the fights I've seen of him, he just swings haymakers. He fought Rojo, who fought Charles Jourdain on the last card. And you'll remember Rojo did pretty well in that fight until he got stopped in the 3rd round. But in that fight, Strader actually had Rojo on all type of skates in the 1st round. But then Rojo came back and ended up finishing Jesse Strader in the 1st round, which wasn't a really good look because he basically had him finished and then he ends up getting finished himself. And please tell me, guys, if that fireworks or whatever it is sounds like explosions, is annoying you, because I'll close my door. But yeah, basically Jesse Strader, he doesn't super impress me. He has got a lot of power. He's got a puncher's chance. If anyone wants to know the definition of a puncher's chance, in my opinion, it's Jesse Strader versus Montel Jackson. Montel Jackson is much higher level than him. The skill level is pretty hilarious, in my opinion. And it's evident in the betting line, guys. If we just check the betting line now, it's pretty ridiculous. So Montel Jackson is like a minus 750 favorite in some spots. He's a minus 833 favorite in that spot. What's the implied probability of that, man? I don't know. But I would say Montel's probably like 85% in this spot, man. So, if you want to be betting Montel, I think the better way to take him is probably to finish the fight because, it's highly likely he's going to finish the fight. I know a lot of sharp people, or a couple, were on the under 2.5 rounds. It's been steamed up now. I believe it opened like minus 140. It's now like minus 190, minus 180. So, you know, the value is slowly drifting away. But look, I really see Montel getting a finish in this fight. Like, as I say, the skill level is pretty hilarious. And when you get this skill level difference, a lot of the time the finishes just happen, you know, even when fighters are not usually finishers. So there we go. I didn't spend too long on that one. Don't have too much to say about that one. But MMA prognoser is saying Gillespie will lose. Maybe. The question marks is that he's coming back off a huge layoff. But I mean, other than that, I really think, you know, he's terrible matchup for Brad Riddell, you know. What's a bad matchup for Brad Riddell? Is it another striker? No. You know, is it a jiu-jitsu guy? Not really, no. I mean, how are they going to get a fight to the ground? It's probably the best matchup for him is probably a jiu-jitsu guy, you know, with bad striking. But we're getting a wrestler who's going to grind him out. Now, look, can he KO Gillespie? The KO is always live. But, you know, unless Gillespie's completely shot from that layoff, which is possible, this is MMA, you know, Gillespie has the style to beat Brad Riddell all day. If he doesn't get him out there, though, I will say that Brad Riddell is going to be around, and you know, he probably will be coming hard in that third round if he doesn't get him out of there. So Gillespie better watch his cardio, but he's got him covered in this fight, really. Anyway, the next fight we're getting is Roman Dolidze versus Trevin Giles. Now, Dolidze coming down from 205 pounds to fight at 185 pounds, which is pretty strange because I think this, you know, this fight, it's pretty short notice again, I think. And, you know, Dolidze is dropping 20 pounds, but I have heard through the grapevine that, you know, he's been planning his cut for a while. So he's not just going to drop 20 pounds overnight or in a week. He's actually been planning it for a while. And, you know, he's going to be the bigger man in there. He's going to be the stronger man. And this fight, it's a bit of a weird one because I don't have a strong opinion either way. So Trevin Giles is a bit of a weird fighter. Like, he looks pretty decent. You know, he's in and out on the feet. But he's got 2 third-round finishes. So he seems to like either... It doesn't look like he's gassed in them fights, but it seems like he just takes his foot off the gas, or he kind of just has a moment of... What's the word? Like, you know, a moment of lax or a lapsidaisical moment. And then he gets finished against Gerald Meerschaert. And, you know, when he's in control of that fight. And then, again, against Zach Cummins, he got dropped. And then I believe he got guillotined in that fight. But Trevin Giles is decent, man. Like, he's a decent fighter. A lot of people hate on him, but I don't really hate on him. And I think he could cause Dolidze some issues in this spot. But I'm gonna edge with the Georgian Dolidze. You know, he's done everything right so far. 8-0. I'm not super blown away by him. You know, in his last fight against John Allen, it was a split, but it shouldn't have been a split. But, you know, he kind of fucked about in that fight. He was able to get the takedowns consistently. And one thing I will say is that if he gets the takedowns on Trevin Giles, which I expect him to do, Giles could be in trouble. You know, Dolidze is going to be the bigger, stronger, more powerful man, especially if he makes that cut correctly. He's going to be used to fighting with heavier bodies. And, you know, he's live to do some damage on Trevin Giles on top. I saw Trevin Giles easily mounted by Ryan Spann when they fought. Obviously, Ryan Spann is a huge man, but I saw him easily mounted in the first round. And Ryan Spann, you know, he could have had Giles out of there. You know, he landed some solid ground and pound. He took Giles back for 1 minute. And Dolidze is meant to be a super high-level grappler now. I question that a little bit just by what he's shown me on the mat. I believe he was a world champion jiu-jitsu player. But, look, he's definitely good. He's got good jiu-jitsu. He knows what he's doing. He can definitely throw up a submission. And, you know, we've seen Giles sub before more than once. I believe he got subbed with the guillotine twice. I believe it was the guillotine by Meerschaert and the guillotine by Zach Cummins. Now, again, don't hold me to everything I say because I've got a really bad memory. But that's why we've got Tapology at the ready. And I'll bring up his record now because I actually do want to know if it was the guillotine. The chat's probably like screaming at me like, yes, it was the guillotine, or no, it was the guillotine. But we'll just bring that up now. But what I mean is that, you know, we've seen him get stubbed before. And as I said, yeah, it was the guillotine in the third round both times. Once by Zach Cummins with a minute left in the fight, and then by Gerald Meerschaert with 3 minutes left in the fight. So, yeah, so as I said previously with the Stoliarenko and Avila fight, I don't like to bet on outcomes that haven't happened. And then obviously I love to bet on outcomes that have happened. And we have seen Giles submitted twice in his UFC tenure so far. So I do think that submission is live by Dolidze, but I just have no interest in playing it, especially where the line's at right now. And we will check exactly where the line is at right now. So I hope you guys can see. If you can see here, you'll see Dolidze is a slight favorite. He's sitting at like minus 140, minus 135 right now. Trevin Jowl, the comeback on him is like plus 110, plus 115, plus 120 range, plus 125, the best you can do. And I just feel the line's pretty accurate. I lean, as you can tell by my breakdown, I lean Dolidze. I think Dolidze can win this by the wrestling, right? Because he's a powerful man. He seems to have good reactive takedowns. I'm not sure his wrestling is, amazing, but his reactive takedowns are pretty good. And if he does get on Giles, I definitely think he can control him and, he maybe even be able to latch up the submission. Now, I will say, if he isn't able to get the fight to the ground or Giles is sticking well on the outside, I do believe Giles can cause him some problems on the feet. I believe he can, Giles is pretty tricky, so he can, take some getting used to. Like you won't just figure him out straight away. So he could nick a one or two rounds, but also Giles, because of his style, he's kind of like got a hands down in and out style. He can be susceptible for that overhand. And that's one of Dolidze's best punches, that straight hand, that, like half straight, half overhand punch. So, he's definitely live for that. I do believe Dolidze is kind of live for the knockout and kind of live for the submission here, because I've never really seen Dolidze hurt or submitted. He's never lost. It's hard for me to give credence into Giles' finishing upside, especially when he's not a quote-unquote finisher. He couldn't finish James Krause, who came up a weight class on like 24 hours. So he's not that much of a finisher, Giles. So if you are betting on Giles, you're kind of betting on Giles to win by decision, in my opinion, although obviously anything can happen in MMA. We don't really know Dolidze. He isn't proven, so he could just have a bit of a dodgy chin, or he could be, susceptible to a submission if he gets his back taken. Sort of them things there, because he's just 8-0. We haven't seen him in many fights. So, that is live. But as I say, I do think you're kind of banking on the Giles decision more than the Giles stoppage. And I've got a sneaky feeling that the Giles decision line might be pretty juicy. So if we just check that now, you can check it with me. Giles wins by submission. No, what do we want? Giles wins by decision. Giles wins by decision is plus 250. Plus 265 is the best you can get it for. So like a 29% implied. Yeah. I don't know. 185 pounds. Big dudes. I wouldn't be running to the window to place that. For my final prediction, I'm going to say, I said the line's accurate, so that means I lean Dolidze, and I'm going to say Dolidze manages to either get a third round submission or just edge it out on the cards. Right, the next fight. And we're coming up to the end of the card now. We've got two fights left. This one is Leonardo Santos versus Grant Dawson. And just 30 seconds, I will be back. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, just turning my oven off. Very unprofessional of me. Anyway, Leonardo Santos versus Grant Dawson. Now, look, this fight is this is a banger of a fight. I'm excited for this fight. Leonardo's a bit of a gangster. He's like 41 years old. He hasn't lost in like 10 years. And then we've got Grant Dawson, who's a pretty decently hyped prospect. He's coming up with a solid wrestling style, but he does love to show off his striking. He's got them big knees up the middle, and he's a very fun guy to watch, another kill or be killed fighter. Now, he's only lost once, so he doesn't get killed a lot, but he's definitely one of them fighters you can see is a little bit fragile on the feet, a little bit fragile to being stopped, but then, he's definitely a finisher himself. He does like to finish the fight. So it's going to be fireworks in this fight because Leonardo is the same. He finishes a lot of his fights. He hurts most of his opponents in his fights. And let's have a look at his record. So we can see he got a decision win against Nad Narimani in his last fight. And that was a really decent performance from Grant Dawson. He pretty much outclassed Nad there. And I think he was a pretty big favorite, actually. I thought the line was a lot closer than that. But yeah, that was a very solid performance from him. He beat Derek Minnar, which we've seen dominate Rosa on the mat recently. So that was pretty good win from him. He finished the fight there. Finished the fight against the 8-0 opponent, Mike Trizano, the fight before that. Julian Erosa went to decision. So, yeah, I mean, like, he's got a solid record there. He's only lost once, and that was to elbows in the first round, 35 seconds into the first round. Oh, my bad. He's lost twice. Oh, he's lost twice by this. Oh, sorry, this is the amateur record. Yeah, I was really confused. I knew he'd only lost once. So, yeah, he lost by decision once, but that was back in 2012. And all his amateur fights that he won, which was every single one apart from one, he finished the fight. And, you know, he's a finisher, guys, right? So, you know, he's definitely got huge finishing upside, especially against someone like Leonardo Santos, who's pretty old now. He's 41 years old. And, you know, with fighters that are this age, you know, this isn't like 35, 36, where you're just coming to the end of your prime. This is 41, you know, where it's old, man. And in a weight class like lightweight, the age means even more. So, like, one of these days, we're going to see Leonardo Santos looking really bad. And it might just come against Grant Dawson. Grant Dawson is the younger man. He's probably going to be the stronger man. He's probably going to want it more. And I don't like that narrative, but, you know, he's going to be he's the one coming up, right? So Leonardo Santos is on his way out and Grant Dawson is on his way in. You know, he's on his way in the door. I do like Leonardo Santos. You know, how can you not? The dude's last loss was against Santiago Ponzinibbio in 2013. And, you know, from then he's been near perfect apart from a draw to Norman Park the year after. He's won all of his fights. He beat Kevin Lee in the first round. You know, beat Anthony Rocco Martin by submission. He beat Stevie Ray just 2 years ago by a punch in the first round. You know, he looked decent in that Roman Bogatov fight, which was his last fight, but he did gas in that fight. And, you know, Bogatov, that was probably one of the hilarious fights of all time in the UFC. Just go and watch that Bogatov versus Santos fight. That third round was ridiculous. Bogatov, all fight, was just like cheating, just grabbing the fence, kneeing him in the balls, just doing like stupid stuff like that. And the ref kept telling him, I think it was Mark Goddard, and it was pretty funny because he kept screaming at him, you know, stop doing this, stop doing this. And Bogatov just kept on doing it. He just kept on kneeing him in the nuts. Like, it was so funny. And he looked like, I didn't know. But I mean, he did the same thing over and over again. Anyway, ended up getting 2 points taken away from him in that third round. And I'm not sure that lost him the fight. I think he was going to lose it anyway. I remember Santos having Bogatov hurt in that fight really badly, and it almost had him out. So, you know, I think he was going to lose that fight anyway, but that was a pretty funny fight. And he looked good in that fight, but he did gas in that third round, right? And against Grant Dawson, I don't know if you want to be gassing in that third round because Grant Dawson's a wrestler, he's a grinder, he's going to put it on you. Now, I will say that if Grant Dawson keeps taking this fight to the ground, which I don't know if he necessarily is, he didn't really look to do that overly in the Nadir Rahmani fight, if I can remember correctly. He was very solid on the feet. He was throwing them knees up the middle, as I said. But the X factor is that if this fight does get to the ground, Leonardo Santos is a very solid jiu-jitsu black belt, and he's always live for the submission if it gets there. So, look, I'm going to give you my final prediction now. I'm going to predict Grant Dawson to stop Leonardo Santos's 10-year, or sorry, what was it, like 9-year, 8-year unbeaten record, and I'm going to predict him to stop it by stopping him. So I think he's going to probably get a late finish, and everyone's going to be sad because everyone likes Leonardo Santos, but Grant Dawson's going to put on a solid performance here. I believe Grant Dawson will have to come through some adversity. Santos is probably going to sting him in that first round, but I trust him to weather the storm and take out the old man late in the fight. Now, I think this is the last fight on the card. And it's Marion Renault versus Macy Chiasson. Now, this fight is a bit of a shit show of a fight, man. I've got no interest really in this fight, so I'll make it quick. Macy Chiasson, you know, she was a very high prospect. She had finished like almost all her fights before she came into the UFC. She went 3-0 on the Contender Series or the Ultimate Fighter. I can't remember what it was now. And it can't be the Contender Series, right? Obviously not. But I thought she came from the Contender Series. Did she go 3-0 then? It must be the Ultimate Fighter because I'm sure She won like 3 fights in a row. This is what I say about my memory, guys. That's why we've got the Tapology record. Yeah, the Ultimate Fighter. Yeah, 3 fights in a row. 3 stoppages in a row. Yeah, so she came through the Ultimate Fighter, and she has had all finishes apart from her second MMA fight until she got in the UFC. And, you know, on her second fight in the UFC, they put her up against Lena Landsberg, and Lena Landsberg just wasn't having none of it. You know, he was able to hit her with some strikes. She wasn't deterred by the physicality of Macy. And then she started to, you know, implement her own grappling, and she was able to win a clear decision. Macy was a huge favorite there. I remember that. I don't know what she is. Minus 450 favorite, guys. You know, it always puts a bad taste in your mouth, even if you haven't bet on it. When a fighter like minus 450 fighter loses, you're like, they're kind of instantly on the block list, you know, as you like to call them, or instantly on the blacklist, I should say, where you just don't want to bet them. Now, every fight is different, but fuck, is this correct? Look at her next fight. So she was at minus 450 against Lena, and then she was a minus 875 versus Shayna Young. Are you serious? And she won decision. And let me tell you something now. That fight, it wasn't, I mean, goddamn, that wasn't really a good fight. Like, you would expect at minus 875 to blow through her opponent like she had done in virtually all of her previous fights, right? That did not happen. I mean, as far as I can remember, that fight, like, it was contested in the clinch quite a lot. And Macy is good in the clinch, right? But yeah, I mean, pretty bad taste in my mouth for Macy. I'm not super high on Macy. She was pretty hyped before she got to the UFC, and you know, she deserved her hype because she got 3 finishes on the Ultimate Fighter. But I'm not super high on her. Now, on the other hand, Marion Renault, I like Marion Renault. You know, she's 9-6-1, so she's got more than double the fights of Macy. So the experience advantage is heavily in her favor. But again, just like the last fight, the experience advantage is in her favor, but damn, the age advantage is definitely not. Marion Renault is 43 years old. She's got to be the oldest woman on the UFC roster. I mean, I don't know if anyone wants to fact check me in the chat, but I'm pretty sure she's going to be the oldest woman on the UFC roster, unless I'm completely forgetting someone. She's probably one of the oldest fighters on the UFC roster. What's Oleinik's age? Alexei Oleinik, because I mean, these two are probably could be, you know, twins born at the same time, because I'm pretty sure even in the men's division, there's not too many people older than 43 years old. But I will say she hasn't looked like completely terrible. Now, she lost her last 3 fights against Kat Zingano, where she got taken down multiple times in that fight, but that's what Kat will do to you. And she lost against Yana, and she lost against Raquel Pennington. Now, Rocky, you know, she was able to clinch her up. She was able to grapple her and out-muscle her. And that's not a great look when you're coming up against Macy, because that is what Macy likes to do. Look, Macy definitely puts it on you on the feet, but Macy loves that clinch. Macy loves them knees. Macy loves them elbows, that Muay Thai striking in the clinch, in the plum. So it's going to be a bit dodgy for Marion Renault if she's getting manhandled like that against Rocky. She probably will be able to get beat in the clinch by Macy, right? If it wasn't for that, I'd probably be backing Marion Renault, because the odds are, you know, again, it's not as bad as last time, but the odds are, again, you know, like she's a minus 200 favorite. That's the best price you're going to get on Macy. You know, you can get her for like minus 210, minus 217 in some places. So, you know, you're looking at a plus 180 for Marion Renault. And to be honest, if Marion Renault hits that plus 233, I'll probably bet her, you know, because that plus 233 is 30% implied. And I think she's got a better chance than 30% to win this fight. But the age combined with, you know, that clinch striking of Macy, I just can't be pulling the trigger. And it's one of them ones where if it does get up to plus 233, I'll probably just pass anyway. I'll be like, no, I can't do it. You know, in my head, I feel like there's value on that line, maybe 5% value or something. But if it actually gets there, I'll probably just pass anyway, because it's a bit of a shit show betting on a 43-year-old fighter. She hasn't won in her last 3 fights. I don't know when she did last win. She last won in 2018 in February as well. So it's even more than 3 years ago. You know, it's 3 years and about a month ago since she last won, and she's 43. So, yeah, I don't think there's value on Macy. I don't think there's value on Renault. Maybe a little bit on Renault. I don't like calling Macy this much of a favorite, but if I'm being honest, the line is probably about right now. So my prediction is going to be Macy Chiasson versus via decision. I don't think you're going to get Renault out of there. Renault's a very tough fighter. She's never been stopped, and even though she's 43, she will come. She's game. Fuck, I want to bet Renault. You know, like in my head, the way she fights, I know who Renault is. I know who Macy is. I want to bet Renault, but I'll need a better number, man. If she gets plus 250, I'll probably have to pull the trigger for like a half unit or something, or 3/4 of a unit. But I can't be betting 43-year-old fighter, man. Especially against Macy. Macy should be improving, you know. She's still a fairly young fighter. I don't know how old she is, but she's 29 years old. So, I mean, she's not young, but she's probably in her prime now. Probably she's in her... You know, she's coming into her prime now, especially for women's MMA. Their prime is a little bit later than the men's, in my opinion, because that experience advantage is more is more effective in the women's division. Women, you know, that are older, their experience matters more because the age matters a bit less in the men's, or matters a bit more in regards to the physical advantages. So the men's physical advantages drop off more than the women's with the age range. I hope I explained that correctly. But basically what I mean is that women can be a bit older and do a bit better. If men are a bit older, it's a little bit more sketchy. But 43 is just too old for me anyway to bet on Marion Renault. You know, Macy has decent experience. I guess she's an Ultimate Fighter winner. She's won 3 times. She's had countless fights in the UFC cage now. More than half her career has been in the UFC cage. So it's not like she's a 21-year-old fighter with like 3 fights and Marion Renault's going to vet her. She could do that, but yeah, I don't think I'm going to pull the trigger, guys. As I say, if it gets out of hand, gets crazy, then I will, but I don't think it's going to get too crazy because people are not going to be running to the shop to bet Macy either. She will be chucked in a couple of parlays. I'm sure people will do that, but I don't think it's going to be crazy enough to move the line where I need it to bet Renault, because I need a lot to bet Renault at 43 years old. So I think that's the last fight, guys. I've just broke down the whole preliminary card for you. I'll just give you my final predictions on all the fights. So I think, and as I say, a lot of these fights I'm not super confident about, but like I'm just going to give you some quick picks now. Bruno Silva, third round submission. Bruno Silva, third round TKO. Sorry. Julia Avila versus Julia Stoliarenko. Julia Avila via decision. Montel Jackson versus Jesse Strader. Montel Jackson, first round submission. Trevin Giles versus Roman Dolidze. Roman Dolidze via decision. Grant Dawson versus Leonardo Santos. Grant Dawson via third round TKO, ground and pound. Marion Renault versus Macy Chiasson. Ugh. Macy Chiasson decision. Macy Chiasson decision, I guess. I'll tell you what, if you want to bet this fight, bet goes to decision. But I think if you check Marion Renault's record, like all her fights that she's won, like all of them apart from one, I think, she stopped. So she doesn't really win decisions. That's the fight goes to decision minus 180. It's not that bad, you know. That's not that bad. I highly doubt Macy's going to stop Marion unless she's fallen off a cliff. And at 43 years old, they're always liable to fall off a cliff. And Macy does it hard. But I don't really think Marion's going to get stopped, man. She's a bit of a dog. Let's just see if there's any value on that line. Women's fight, you know. So we'll check Marion. What I'll check is Marion's decisions. So she lost decision. Has she won decisions? She won a decision there. She gone to decision a couple of times, lost them mostly. Let's check Macy's record. Let's see if there's any value on this minus 180 line that fight goes to decision. Macy's record, she lost against Lena Landsberg. She didn't get hurt in there. She lost against TKO, against Anna Dempster in the amateur career TKO. Right, I don't really like that. See, I haven't really seen Macy hurt, right? But Maybe I should watch that Pani fight again. I think she just overwhelmed Pani. So I just don't think Renault's gonna get stopped, man. I don't think Renault's gonna get stopped. Minus 180. It's like what, 65% implied? There might be some value on that, you know. I mean, look, she's gone to decision in her last 2 fights. Before that, Macy's fights all been stopped. But Renault doesn't get stopped, man. She's tough. I might watch a couple more Renault fights where she's fighting a solid, like a dangerous fighter, but she's not really. Rocky don't stop people. Cat don't really, not, you know, only maybe from top position. Yana, I don't know. Who's she fought here? She choked out Jessica in round 1. See, the thing is like all of her wins are basically finishes, you know? She only has won 1 decision in her whole career. And she's got 9 wins and she's only got 1 decision win out of that. So if she does win, a lot of times it's by stoppage, but I don't know. I've spent way too long on this fight, guys. Way too long. Why am I still talking about this fight? There might be some value on that minus 180 fight goes to decision. And look, it's not out of the realm of possibility that I actually bet that line. I'll see what, you know, other books release this line at, but at the moment, minus 180. Yeah, there may be some value on that. Let's get off this now. I've got nothing more to say on that fight. I'll catch up with the chat. But it's almost out. Anyone want to hit up the chat? Hit up, man. Any questions you got for me, ask me. Andrew Jack saying, great analysis of the fights. Good to see how you approach fights from a betting angle. Thank you. Yes, this is how I do them. And again, I've taped a couple of these fights quite a long time ago. When I say a long time, like 4 or 5 days ago, some of them. So it's not fresh in my head. And I got a bad memory anyway. So sometimes I might, you know, slip up on my words or not remember exactly, But basically, every time I